So.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. First, Jim, I would ask that you would go around the Zoom room here and have each organization identify who their voting member is going to be.
Sure. Just go down just random alphabetical order here. Is anyone here from the Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board? I didn't see anyone. Okay. Centro, Brian, yourself.
Yep.
Anyone else from your agency out today?
I don't think so.
City of Syracuse Common Council. Joe.
Joe Driscoll here, representing the Syracuse Common Council.
Great. Office of the Mayor.
I'm here. It's Corey.
Hi, Corey. Welcome. Neil, you're on as well?
Just as a backup.
Okay, thank you. Empire State Development. Center State CEO. New York State DEC.
Trendon Cho here.
Welcome. New York State DOT.
Hi, Jim. Dave Smith here. Mark Burchett. I haven't seen his name yet, but he should be joining us as well.
Okay.
See, his name's there.
Come on, Jim.
Oh, hey, Mark.
Morning.
New York State Thruway Authority. I think he's connecting right now, actually. Give him a second. New York State Thruway Authority, you're connected?
Yes, the Jaron George is here with the Thruway Authority.
Oh. Onondaga County Office of the Executive, so we have, I think, Martin Moss or Odine Dyer as their representatives. Odine, you're still there, right? Yep, there it is. Onondaga County Legislature.
Dave Knapp.
Yeah, sorry, Odine's here. I was trying to go through my phone, but it looks like it's not working, so I'll be using the computer mic.
Okay. Mr. Knapp, thank you. Welcome. Onondaga County Planning Board. And Dan said he might be a few minutes late. And Syracuse Planning Commission.
I'm from Steve Bullock from the Planning Commission.
Welcome. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I'd ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the April 28th meeting.
So moved. Dave Knapp.
A second.
Seconded, Dave Smith.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. 2021 UPWP status report, and for informational purposes only.
Correct. Let's just give you a quick update on a couple of minor things where we're at. In general, our staff is still a mix of on-site and at home, like most places are. But most of our projects have been able to remain on schedule with a couple of necessary modifications. Things like projects relating to schools and things have had to be put on hold. We have 8 completed studies that are on the program today, so we'll be presenting those later on the agenda. For public participation, we're still advancing and learning like everybody else in terms of how to do this remotely. Part of what we'd like to hear from you is feedback on today's meeting, because most of the presentations we've done are pre-recorded, are going to be played and restricted to 5 minutes to try and make this process work as seamlessly and flawlessly as possible. So I would like your feedback on that afterwards if you think it was good or poor, so we can modify that for future meetings of this nature. In terms of federal transportation legislation, we have an expiring transportation bill. There is good talk of a continuing resolution, but it is, as you can read the news, a contentious time in Washington right now. So I'm not entirely sure what we can hope for on that, but traditionally transportation is one of the things that is bipartisan, and getting together for a continuing resolution is, I hope, likely. In terms of data collection, we've wrapped up most of our summer data collection, a lot of work for the city of Syracuse on their sidewalk data collection. Didn't really do any traffic counts this summer because of the abnormal travel patterns. They really wouldn't have amounted to much. For bike and ped planning, for those of you who don't know, we have our 2020 bike map in. If you would like a box of bike maps for you to distribute, you are welcome to them. Please let me or anyone on staff know. We've continued to work with the Empire State Trail Economic Opportunities Plan for the county. and all of our work associated with that has been wrapped up currently. The long-range transportation plan is completed and on today's agenda, along with several other projects. The Dome Traffic Management and Event Strategic Plan, which is the project that's going to envision how you get to Carrier Dome after a new I-81 project has been constructed for special events. That scope was written and approved, an RFP was out on the street, and we received 10 expressions of interest and 8 proposals. We're going to be reviewing those proposals in the next week or so. It's got a project budget of about $400,000 and expected to be a highly competitive process. We have scopes of work that have just recently been approved and work begun on the Tuscarora Road Corridor Study, the US Route 11 Corridor Plan, the Village of Skaneateles Pedestrian and Access Study, and the City of Syracuse Residential Parking Permit Study. The Manlius Village Pedestrian Study, the scope is written but has not yet been approved. Syracuse Sidewalk Planning Study is well underway. And lastly, I'll just leave you on the fact that with the Transportation Improvement Program, which is our capital program for funding all the federal aid projects in the community, this is the month that closes out the federal fiscal year. We had a lot of activity at our executive committee earlier this month to shuffle projects and schedules around to make sure that every dollar that could be obligated was, because to lose federal funding in our community right now would be a bad thing. We need every dollar we can have invested in our community. It looks like we were able to successfully do almost all of that, which is excellent. I know that state DOT worked really hard with our member agencies to make that happen. So thank you very much. We have a couple of minor tip amendments later today, but those don't start until the next federal fiscal year, October 1st. That's it for an update. If there's any projects we're working on you'd like to know something about, please ask.
Hey, thanks, Jim. Any questions on any of that for Jim? All right. Item B, update on I-81 viaduct project.
Yeah, I'll let New York State DOT take that one, and if they want to give the group an update on where they are with that project.
Maybe Dave or Mark.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is Mark. I think, Dave, you'd like me to do it, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Alrighty. So I'll be brief. Essentially, last time we had gotten together, policy committee was a little bit ago, but I want everybody to know that DOT has continued to work very hard on the 81 viaduct project, and a lot of that's behind the scenes, not out in the public, but we continue to work on things. So last year, 2019, was a big year for the project. We held the open house in the summertime, and at that time, DOT had recommended the community grid as our preferred alternative. We created some new ideas like the Business Loop 81 concept that for the community grid that maintained a high-speed freeway into the city and out of the city at 65 miles per hour. We followed that up with numerous neighborhood meetings. In total, we had over 11 neighborhood meetings. We had 4 noise wall meetings and multiple stakeholder engagements with a variety of different people who have interest in the project. We received through that process well over 1,000 comments from the general public, and all comments are taken into consideration and all comments get responded to in the current draft environmental impact statement. So we've worked through those details. New components of the project came up as a part of that engagement. And all of it leads to doing some additional engineering and additional environmental analysis. I'll give you a example of one of those. The report that we put out in April of 2019, when we were done with the public engagement, there was a lot of comments that we received related to exit 3 along 481, which is the Route 5 exit right there at Wegmans. And so None of that work was included in the project, and we've taken into consideration all the comments we got there and multiple other places throughout. And really the goal of the public engagement, one, it's educational to the public as to what the proposals are, but they're also listening sessions to us to take into consideration what the public has to say to improve on the alternatives that are being developed, the build alternatives. We're down to 2 alternatives, the community grid, which we're recommending as a preferred alternative, but we still carry the viaduct replacement as a viable solution. So what happened is we've completed our work related to the modifications of the draft environmental impact statement. And in July of this year, we shared the document with our federal partners. And our federal partners need to buy into the changes that have been made to the document. And we're in the process of collaborating with them on the revisions to the document. Ultimately, what this leads to is the document needs to go to headquarters in Washington for a legal sufficiency review, and that step is ongoing. Once we get past those steps, ultimately we will be releasing the draft environmental impact statement to the public and hosting a public hearing. And there's some things up in the air, especially related to COVID and bringing mass groups together. When we held our open house June 18th, 2019, we had around 900 people there at the open house, and we fully expect that the public hearing for the project will have that many or more. So recently we've been reviewing what some other states have been doing nationally with having NEPA public hearings across the country. Maryland just had hosted like 10 virtual public meetings to get information out and take back comments related to the project. So those discussions are still ongoing with FHWA. Anybody, the whole COVID side of things, we won't do something that is not safe for the public. So right now we're restricted from having mass gatherings. But I think, some of the optimism for COVID with vaccines and stuff, hopefully we're not dealing with that too far into next year. So on the time frame, on the schedule, that hasn't been established yet. And I think COVID does need to play itself out a little bit related to that. But rest assured, the department and the feds are fully engaged in looking at the project and trying to get it to a point so that we can engage the community at a public hearing. And the process would be, we would release the draft environmental impact statement, and then we'd be required to hold that public hearing within 2 to 3 weeks of that time frame. So I'd be happy to take any questions that anybody has related to the project.
Thank you, Mark.
Question? Yeah, Mark, it's Joe Driscoll from the council. When you said, I guess I'm just curious. You said you completed the changes. You mentioned the exit there near Wegmans and the changes that you guys have done. As we bring it out, as we bring out the DEIS into public again and get more public input, will there be more changes done, or is it kind of set in stone as it is? Do you imagine any more major changes as a result of further public discourse going forward?
Yeah, Joe, great question. And our goal of public engagement is always to try and get the alternatives to be better alternatives long before the cranes, the bulldozers, and the backhoes show up. And so as we have progressed, going back to the scoping phase where we had 17 alternatives, now we're down to 2. You've seen the department implement some new things to make the alternatives better. I used exit 3 as an example. There's a lot of other things that have come up. There's controversy over the economic analysis. There was talk about different components around Colvin Street to serve the backside of Syracuse University. Good things that people bring up, and it shows the true value of public engagement and trying to listen to what people have to say. So just like we eliminated the missing links, the I-81 southbound to 690 westbound and 690 eastbound to 81 northbound 3 years ago, these new components will continue to occur, but they really have to occur before the record of decision. We can't make major changes once the contractor is in place. We can make minor changes. We can change some things. So we're trying to get the big stuff and really understand that.
Okay, so you're saying, yeah, there's still, so the record of decision, so in the timeline, so you present the DIS, so you're saying those major changes would have to happen after the introduction of the DIS, but before a decision is made, is that correct?
The record of decision, yeah. So after we have the public hearing, after the draft environmental impact statement is released, there's a document called the final environmental impact statement and record of decision. The record of decision is really the final solution.
Right. So as I take it from that, there still is the public input still has the potential to have an impact up until that point, correct?
Without question. And I just mentioned, Joe, the city's been working very hard with the department, collaborating on the whole jobs initiative. Those are things, those details need to be worked out as part of, prior to us soliciting contractors, so we can, make jobs a important factor within the Central New York solutions.
And if I could just ask one last quick question. I know it's very difficult with COVID and everything that's going on. Do you have specific, even ballpark timelines for all this stuff? Do you know when DEIS will be introduced and when you imagine record of decision? I know there's, you have a flexible potential there for a comment period, could be as little as 45 days or it could be longer if you guys wanted. Does DOT know when they plan to release all that and how long the public comment period plans to be?
Yeah, so Joe, just to handle the later one first, typically it's 45 to 60 days from the time we release the DEIS. This is a very complicated project, more complicated than probably any other DOT project within New York State. So it would not surprise me if we didn't do the 60-day review time frame. That's really why the public hearing has to occur close to the release of the document so that we can really share with the public the components that have changed in there. People can go read the preliminary DEIS. That's on our website. It was released April of 2019. And what we're working on is really a modification as to that document. We don't have approval as of today with our federal partners. We are, I have 2 meetings later today with our federal partners to discuss components of that. Once we've secured that, then it goes to the headquarters for the legal sufficiency review. So it's really dangerous for me to talk about timeframes because whatever I told you would be wrong. There's a parallel track with COVID and we just don't know, is a vaccine coming out November? Is it coming out December? Is it coming out January? When is everybody going to be able to get it? So I think our commitment from transportation is we don't want to hold public meetings that would be unsafe for people. So we really need to work that detail out. And there's a lot of people within the community. People talk about being able to have a virtual meeting. A lot of people in the community don't have access. And that's an issue that we don't want to deny people the ability to be able to participate. So, you know, I think we haven't worked out that detail yet. We're more focused on getting the document to a point where we are ready to share with the
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions for Mark?
Just a real quick, Dave Knapp, legislature. Any more information on, I know you were talking about exit 3 off of 481, but what about the other side of the county as far as the southern towns and the western towns on truck traffic and the Salina area?
Yeah, so Dave, the specifically one of the things that we heard loud and clear from the northern communities were related to the economic impacts associated with Interstate 481 becoming Interstate 81 and Interstate 81 becoming the Business Loop 81. So we had agreed last fall to do quite a bit more economic analysis associated with the diversion of truck traffic, the diversion of vehicles and so forth. And we completed that as part of sharing that information with the feds back in July. I can't speak to what the results are in that at this point in time because we're in conversations with our federal partners over that issue. But that will be one of the things that we talk about at the public hearing. That will be one of the things that we talk that is included in this draft environmental impact statement when it is ready to be released to the public.
So both situations, the economic, but like I said, the bigger concern to the south and to the west is truck traffic.
Yeah, there's been a lot of conversations, and there are quite a bit of information that was included within the preliminary draft environmental impact statement related to percentage of trucks and their changes in movements. I think that they were formulated in what was called screen lines, which really estimated how the community grid would move traffic around. And at a lot of the public meetings that we held, we had boards that really reference what the change in travel patterns, average annual daily traffic would be on these roadways. So we have that information. Sometimes it's like finding a needle in the haystack because it's 15,000 pages of documentation and people have a hard time finding that. But the department's committed to you know, talking to anyone. I know I've done a number of stakeholder meetings with people at Skinny Atlas, and we've just done some recent engagement with Village of Homer. And so we want people to understand what the numbers are showing, what the differences are. So if there are specifics out there that was shared within the preliminary DIS, that's something we can follow up with those communities.
All right, thanks, Mark. Any other questions for Mark? All right, moving on. Any old business?
No.
Okay. New business, long-range transportation plan update.
Yeah, the purpose here is to have the policy committee adopt the new 2020 long-range plan update. It's completed. We have to complete this mandatorily by law every 5 years. The full draft document was available on our website for people to review. A summary was sent out with the mailing for you to take a look at. This is the one presentation that is not pre-recorded because we anticipate there might be some questions that might need to stop in the middle of or whatnot. So Megan Vitale is going to give us a live presentation of this one right now. And then we open up for questions and answers. Megan?
Hey, thanks, Jim. Assume everyone can hear me. I'm going to share my screen now. So the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan 2020 update. So our original 2050 LRTP was adopted in September of 2015. It was our first entirely new plan since 1995 with new goals and objectives, although updates had been published in between. The new 2050 LRTP emphasized performance-based planning in response to the current federal guidance and included a system performance report for our transportation system. Also in 2015, we published the Transportation Atlas as a companion to the Long Range Transportation Plan. So federal regulations require that we update our LRTP every 5 years. Since the FAST Act was signed in December of 2015, multiple federal rulemakings have been issued that specify requirements for performance measures and the LRTP system performance report. These specifics weren't available when we originally published our 2050 LRTP. So our updated plan includes some changes to comply with those rules. Since 2015, SMTC has adopted multiple resolutions in support of state DOT's performance measures and Centro's performance measures, and these are also reflected in the updated plan. For this update, we also reviewed additional regional and municipal plans that have been released since 2015 and incorporated information and recommendations from some of our own recent studies as well. We reviewed demographic and economic conditions and updated these in the LRTP as necessary. So the FAST Act articulates 7 national goals for the transportation system, and these were unchanged from MAP 21, which was the previous legislation. Since SMTC, we don't actually build anything ourselves, our LRTP does not address the goal of reduced project delivery delays, but the other 6 goals are addressed in our plan, and they form the primary organizing elements of our plan. In 2015, our staff reviewed numerous regional and municipal plans to create a draft list of objectives within the framework of those national goals. These objectives were reviewed and accepted by the Study Advisory Committee and are documented in the existing 2050 plan. For this current update, we reviewed, updated, and new plans since 2015 and compared those to the existing plan objectives. The Study Advisory Committee for this update agreed that by and large, the goals and objectives for our LRTP should remain as we wrote them in 2015, with some minor modifications to reflect changes in the federal performance management requirements. The goals and objectives, along with regionally significant projects, are described in Chapter 2 of the plan. The 4 regionally significant projects were identified in the 2015 LRTP, and these remain in the update. We updated the text of the plan to reflect changes since 2015, such as the release of the I-81 viaduct project preliminary DEIS/draft design report, though the plan does not specify a preferred solution. Enhanced transit was identified as a regionally significant project in 2015, but since then, SMTC completed the Syracuse Metropolitan Area Regional Transit, or SMART study, which identified BRT and mixed traffic as the locally preferred alternative for enhanced transit in our region. So that's reflected in the update. The regional trail network has continued to expand, and we added information in the update about the Empire State Trail. And an inland port was also identified in 2015 as a regionally significant project. The current update reflects the current plans for investment at the DeWitt Rail Yard. Chapter 3 of the LRTP includes demographic and economic data for our region. This forms the basis of all of our planning. Much of the data in the 2015 plan and in our atlas come from the decennial census. So that was based on the 2010 decennial numbers. Since the 2010 census is taking place right now, we don't have new decennial data. We won't have that for another few years. But when we compared the most current 5-year American Community Survey population estimates for our planning area to the 2010 decennial census numbers, we saw that there has been virtually no change in our total population. Also, other key indicators were all within a few percentage points of the data reported in 2010. Where available, Chapter 3 includes new data, but by and large, the demographics of our region have not changed much in the past 5 years. The LRTP update includes some new economic data and points out new potential employment centers in our region. We also added a section addressing travel and tourism to meet the federal requirements. Chapter 4 includes the description of our transportation system. This is, I believe, the longest chapter in the plan. It includes the required system performance report. The new system performance report addresses all of the federally required performance measures that have been defined since 2015. And these are identified in individual tables throughout Chapter 4, along with the respective performance targets where applicable. When we were conducting outreach for the LRTP back in 2015, we received a lot of questions about how emerging technology, such as autonomous vehicles, would impact transportation planning. At that time, especially, there were still so many unanswered questions, and our focus was really on creating those new goals and objectives and identifying regionally significant projects. So in 2015, we only touched briefly on these emerging technology concerns, but the current update includes a new section within Chapter 5 that describes many of these emerging technologies and identifies relevant policy considerations such as accessibility, data management, and impacts to VMT, or vehicle miles traveled. The list of projects has been updated in this LRTP. For the short term, so the first 5 years of the plan, the list is consistent with the SMTC's current TIP, our capital program. For the next 10 years of the plan, so the midterm years, 2025 through 2034, we worked with the state DOT, county DOT, and the city of Syracuse and Centro to develop a list of projects. Inclusion in the financial analysis of the LRTP does not guarantee that a project will be funded. Each project must still eventually compete in the TIP process. But the list in the LRTP articulates a vision for the future based on the information we have available right now. Projects selected for inclusion on future TIPs will be evaluated based on the LRTP goals and objectives and weighed against other projects proposed in that cycle. So the current LRTP lumps all of the maintenance projects together by category and only lists non-maintenance projects individually, but our update does this a little differently. So lumping all those projects together gives, we felt, undue importance to the non-maintenance projects, when in reality, many of the largest projects in our region are just maintaining the current system, not expanding capacity. So listing the large maintenance projects individually in this update gives a more accurate picture of the importance of maintenance projects in this region. So there's just a lot of projects to pave the roads and repair bridges just to keep the system intact. The plan anticipates project costs over the entire length of the plan, including both highway and transit projects, to total about $3.27 billion. About 66% of that total is for highway system maintenance, including bridges and TSMO related projects. Another 22% is for transit maintenance, and only about 12% for non-maintenance projects. I just wanted to note, based on the discussion at our planning committee meeting back in August, there was one project that was removed from the midterm list of county highway projects. It was a duplication in error of a project at Route 31 in Codnoy Road that was also on the short-term list. So that is still included on the short-term list, and that was removed from the midterm because, again, it was a duplication, an oversight there. So this table shows the fiscal constraint for our LRTP with total anticipated revenue at about 3.3 billion compared to total project costs of 3.27 billion. The 30 or so million dollars remaining available is less than 1% of the total anticipated revenue. And there is a transfer shown of highway funds for transit that is reflected on the current tip. The plan update also acknowledges some additional or illustrative projects. These are projects that are desired, but are not included in the financial plan because a funding source has not been identified. All of these were previously identified in the LRTP in 2015 as additional projects. Costs for I-81 and for the BRT system have been updated based on new information since 2015. The plan also notes that an additional $2 billion is needed to bring roads and bridges into a state of good repair. And the update retains the list of projects that have been discussed in the community but are not included in the LRTP, generally because previous studies have found a relatively minimal benefit for high costs associated with those projects. A lot of the work that we do in any given year yields public involvement that is incorporated into our overall long-range planning process. Some notable projects with significant public involvement in the past 5 years include the SMART study, the surveys that we conducted for Centro, and our WorkLink study. This outreach builds on the public outreach originally conducted in 2015, including multiple public meetings around the region and a survey pertaining to the goals and objectives. We also conducted additional outreach for this update. Since we were unable to hold in-person public meetings this past spring, we created an LRTP newsletter highlighting key elements of the update process, which was mailed to over 4,000 addresses and emailed to over 500 email addresses. The goals and objectives were available for review on our website, and we also used an online financial simulation tool that allowed people to provide feedback on spending categories within the financial plan and respond to a few specific questions regarding the city's bike plan and the BRT system. The draft document was made available for download on our website, and public comments could be submitted by online form, email, or mail from August 3rd through September 2nd. Typically, we would hold a public meeting or a series of public meetings to review the draft document. Instead, we created a narrated presentation that was posted to our YouTube page with a link from our website. And this highlighted key elements of the LRTP update. These public involvement opportunities were publicized through a press release and a legal notice, plus emails to all addresses in the SMTC newsletter list, and letters to environmental agencies and other transportation-related agencies. 5 individuals submitted comments within the public comment period, and these are summarized in Appendix I along with responses. So adoption by the policy committee today will fulfill the requirement to update the plan every 5 years. We will continue to work closely with our federal partners and state DOT to ensure that we are ready to update the LRTP as necessary to incorporate the selected alternative for the I-81 viaduct project. We expect that update will need to occur prior to our typical 5-year update cycle. In response to comments that we have received from our federal partners recently, within this LRTP update process, we intend to examine some innovative financing options, especially those that might be appropriate to a region our size, and we'll examine our public involvement methods in preparation for our next LRTP update, whenever that might occur. That is all I have.
Thank you, Megan.
Yep.
Any questions for Megan on our long-range transportation plan update that is mandatory to be adopted if we want to keep our federal funding to our community goals?
Hey, Megan, this is Dave Mankiewicz. I'm curious, I heard you loud and clear that the I-81 expense is not in the 3.27 billion and that you have to update it when it's done. But is there an anticipation that the I-81 funding might impact the 3.27 billion? In other words, that some of that might be needed to do I-81?
We
That's-
need, sorry.
That is a complete unknown, Dave. There's just no other way to answer that. That is just an unknown. The monies that have been identified in the long-range transportation plan that Megan highlighted, those are known expenses and known costs. The cost, if I-81 is going to dip into that and need those funds, that means we're going to have to choose a bit of triage in terms of what projects are currently on the short, medium, and long-range vision that will not be advanced at that point in time. So we're hopeful that it doesn't come to that. We won't know until there's a funding plan presented by New York State DOT. So there's really no way to answer that question right now.
Thanks, Jim. That's good.
Any other questions?
Yeah, if I could, Megan, you mentioned that you know, so much is spent on maintaining and excuse me, I'm not as familiar as I should be with all of the studies referenced, but you said, you know, so much of it is spent on maintaining the current system. What plans do we have for, if any, expanding the current systems? You know, you said that you know, most of what we're able to do at the moment is maintaining. Do we have any discussions currently about, you know, expanding current services or you know, anything along those lines in that discussion?
By expansion, Joe, do you mean expansion of physical infrastructure, or do you mean expansion of services provided to the community?
Either one. You know, I mean, obviously we know 81's a big conversation. We're all talking about that, but I was just curious if there's any you know, discussions about and obviously, you know, I'm aware economic realities were challenging before COVID, and they'll certainly be more challenging now. But I'm just curious if there, you know, where the conversation is about increased services or increased infrastructure, anything along those lines about conversations we might be having.
So, Joe, within Chapter 6 of the LRTP, the current one and in the update, there are some tables that list the projects that were included in the plan. So, yes, there are some non-maintenance, and they are divided out now into non-maintenance, major maintenance, and minor maintenance. So there are some non-maintenance projects listed in there, but overall those form, the non-maintenance projects are a small percentage of our anticipated project costs. But yes, there are a few capacity related projects, some safety projects, some bike ped expansion projects, and the reduction of off-peak headways for the bus service. But again, the BRT system is kind of on the same plane with I-81, that's in the illustrative projects list.
Gotcha. Thanks. I'll follow up with you again too. I'd love to get into the weeds on some of those, but this probably isn't the proper.
Yeah,
time.
I'm happy to talk about it. You know how to get in touch with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I will. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Hey, Jim and Megan, just to answer the gentleman's question before about the monies, like you said, you know, they you know, we don't know where they come from, and I think you mentioned this, Jim. Regardless of where they come from, they need to go through the process. You know, they need to be included into the LRTP through the policy. And if they're going to be in the first 4 years, they need to also be included through the process, approved by the policy board. So I think you mentioned that, but just to reiterate that, Jim and Megan. And one other thing, I just, you know, like I think I mentioned this before, I'd just like to thank Megan and Jim. We went through a lot of back and forth, you know, providing comments, and I appreciate, you know, all the time and the work that you did working for this whole plan. So maybe, Jim, you have to give Megan a few weeks off after this.
Oh, all right.
But thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? All right, then I'm looking for a motion to adopt the long-range transportation plan.
I'll move it. This is Dan Kwasnowski at SACWA.
Thank you. In a second.
This is Corey. I'll second.
Okay, thanks. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Great, thanks. Next, we're moving on to amendment.
Yep, we have two minor tip amendments here. They are both for New York State DOT. There are additions to the program, the capital program. They are for the next fiscal year that begins in October. There are two paving projects. One is paving Route 20, Lafayette Pompey Town line to the Madison County line for $1.449 million of NHPP federal funds and about $400,000 in state dedicated funds. The offset for that project is provided by the Onondaga Lake Parkway Safety Improvements Project. The other paving project is Route 31 from Baldwinsville Village Line to Belgian Bridge, town of Lysander. Again, New York State DOT. Construction and inspection phases in federal fiscal year 2021. 813,000 of NHPP federal funds and 224,000 of state dedicated funds, with the offset again being provided by the Parkway project. If there's any questions, Mark or Dave can answer them.
Any questions? Okay, again, looking for a motion to adopt the tip amendments.
Dave Knapp, I'll move it.
Thanks, Dave. Second.
I'll second.
Thanks, Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Gaddis and West Fayette Street complete streets review.
We're looking here for the policy committee to acknowledge that this project has been completed. It's been done as part of two UPWP cycles, the 1819 and 1920 cycles. This project was to assist the city of Syracuse in identifying opportunities to add or improve bike, ped, and transit facilities within the existing right-of-way of the South Gaddis and West Fayette Street corridors. We have a pre-recorded brief presentation, 4 to 5 minutes, by Danielle Kroll, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. Mario, if you want to launch the presentation.
Hello, my name is Danielle Kroll, and I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the South Gaddis and West Fayette Streets Complete Streets Review project. As part of the SMTC's Unified Planning Work Program, the City of Syracuse asked us to help identify opportunities to add and improve bike, pedestrian, and transit facilities within the existing right-of-way on both South Gaddis and West Fayette Streets. The study area for the project included South Gaddis Street between Erie Boulevard West and Bellevue Avenue, and West Fayette Street from Tompkins Street in the west to Walton Street in the east. For this project, we gathered the existing conditions noted on the slide, including traffic and queuing counts on South Gaddis Street, as well as parking counts along both corridors. All of the existing conditions data was summarized and analyzed in the draft report. We also developed some initial concepts and design ideas for making improvements to both corridors. SMTC staff conducted this study with the advice and assistance of a study advisory committee, which met 4 times over the course of the study. The SAC included the City of Syracuse, their Planning, Engineering, and Operations departments, and the Onondaga County Health Department. One public input session was held for the project in February 2020. Most of the public comments received through the meeting acknowledged a need for improved pedestrian access and facilities, as well as a desire for bike accommodations. The desire for formalized parking along the western end of West Fayette Street was also noted. The SMTC developed general recommendations that can be implemented to improve the overall active transportation experience within these corridors. These include transit-friendly features, such as large concrete landing pads and benches, which are recommended for bus stops with the highest ridership in the corridor. These are noted on the slide. Pedestrian recommendations for the entire corridor include bringing all sidewalks, crosswalks, and curb ramps into ADA compliance and city codes compliance. The city should also consider adding rectangular rapid flashing beacons, which are used to supplement pedestrian warning signs at uncontrolled intersections or mid-block crossings, to crosswalks on South Geddes Street at Marcellus, Fitch, and Roland Streets, and West Fayette Street with Magnolia and Seneca or Tioga Streets. Specific study recommendations include either a side path on the west side of South Geddes Street or a road diet on South Geddes Street so that bike lanes can be added. A side path would accommodate both bicyclists and pedestrians. A road diet would continue to accommodate pedestrians on both sides of Geddes Street and provide on-road bicycle facilities for cyclists. The SMTC prepared section elevation concept drawings of what bike lanes or a shared use path could look like on South Geddes Street between West Fayette Street and Erie Boulevard West. There were two options for bike lanes. One widens the sidewalk to 5 feet on each side with a 6-foot bike lane. The other leaves the existing 4-foot sidewalk and adds a bike lane with a buffer. The side path option includes a raised 10-foot shared use path, and this was the option preferred by the public. On West Fayette Street, formalized parking on the western end of the corridor is recommended, along with improved sidewalks. Public input suggests a preference for the option shown here that adds formalized parking to both sides of West Fayette Street, as well as a 6-foot sidewalk to the south side of the street. We also developed a walkway enhancement concept for under the railroad bridge on Fayette Street, located west of Geddes Street. Through this study, it was also clear that a multi-use trail linking Lipe Art Park to the west side of South Geddes Street is highly desired by the public and would make a great addition to these neighborhoods. This concludes the brief presentation of the South Geddes and West Fayette Streets Complete Streets Review project. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Anyone have any questions for Danielle?
Okay, I'd ask for a motion to acknowledge the completion of the report.
So moved, Dave Smith.
Thanks, Dave. In a second.
Second.
Who was
Driscoll.
that?
Second from Joe Driscoll.
Thanks, Joe. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, RTC Market Area Access Study.
This study is to have the policy committee acknowledge completion of the RTC Market Area Mobility Study as part of the 1819 UPWP. The SMTC identified 4 intersections to improve for Northside residents who walk or bike to the regional market on Destiny USA. The study also identifies high-level options to connect the existing trails. We have a pre-recorded about 5-minute presentation. The study was completed by Mike Alexander, but it is the presentation is narrated by Andrew Fraser. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is a presentation on the SMTC's RTC Market Area Mobility Study. The Market Area Mobility Study was proposed by the City of Syracuse to identify where most Northside residents walk or bike across Hiawatha Boulevard to access the market for groceries. This study identifies bicycle and pedestrian improvement concept plans for priority crossing locations. SMTC also identified big picture ideas to link to places like Destiny USA, a major employment center, and to surrounding trail networks. This cursory assessment will help inform upcoming LWRP and Loop the Lake planning efforts. The planning process involved extensive public outreach. Nearly 100 people attended community meetings or visited the information booths we staffed at the market. People echoed the need to develop a robust walkway and bikeway network to, through, and around the market. We also learned that people prefer wide sidewalks and pathways to carry groceries on foot or bike, and to allow for side-by-side travel with families. When talking with the Refugee Resettlement Service team, We learned that many refugee residents commute to this area via bike during evening hours to work late night shifts at the mall or at locations in Salina. So, people discussed the need for lighting and snow removal to accommodate these commutes. Safety and security needs were also common themes. As a part of our assessment, SMTC inventoried existing sidewalks and made note of worn paths due to high foot traffic. We assessed crashes and noted bicycle and pedestrian as well as fatal and serious injury crash locations. We assessed approximate right-of-way width to inform about the potential for on and off-road facility options. We measured all roadways and noted lane and shoulder widths. We had several staff observe where people crossed the road on Thursday and Saturday during the market's busiest hours. We discovered that most walkers and bikers choose to cross Hiawatha along the south side of Carbon Street or along the north side of Park Street. We identified 4 priority intersections for concept plans. As mentioned, people crossed along the north side of Park Street at Hiawatha. It is 5 lanes wide at this location, plus a 10-foot wide center median. Using Synchro, we determined that you could reduce the southbound left, through, and right lanes into a single lane for all movements. Likewise, the number of eastbound and westbound lanes may be reduced. The configuration of northbound lanes are necessary to accommodate higher traffic volumes. We use this information to develop our concept plans. Again, here's what the intersection looks like today. Option A includes a single southbound lane for all movements, plus new sidewalks, crosswalks, curb cuts, and shared lane markings. In addition, Option B also narrows Park Street by combining some lanes on both the eastbound and westbound approaches. This allows a portion of Park Street to be repurposed as an off-road path similar to the Creek Walk. We also explored extending Carbon Street into the market where it currently exists as a gravel road. Most people cross at this location. Because it is undeveloped, there is sufficient space to accommodate on- or off-road facilities. This concept plan shows how you can connect an off-road pathway to the Park Street pathway. The land for the road extension is owned by the Market Authority. We spoke with the market's director at the time and incorporated his ideas into this concept to address several of his concerns. Hiawatha Boulevard north of Carbon is wide enough to accommodate bike lanes as shown at the Tex-Simone intersection. We also looked at Park Street at NBT Bank Parkway and Harborside Drive. This image looks north. The intersection exists under the I-81 bridge, and you can see the CSX Railroad Bridge in the background. The footprint of existing supports pose unique design challenges at this location. This is the same intersection, but looking south. Here we showed the extension of the off-road pathway along Park Street and how it could connect across Harborside Drive to Destiny USA. The remaining approaches would include sidewalk and crosswalk improvements. As mentioned in the report, it may be possible to extend the pathway north to the CSX bridge around the I-81 bridge abutments, but connecting it under the narrow railroad bridge requires additional assessment beyond the scope of this study. An abandoned bikeway exists on the opposite side of the bridge, and the new sidewalks were also recently installed at this location as well. As mentioned, the report also describes potential ways to connect to Destiny USA, the abandoned bikeway north of the railroad bridge, the Loop the Lake Trail, the Bear Trap Creek Trail, and Bike Route 11. These ideas will help inform future LWRP and Loop the Lake planning efforts. At this point, I welcome any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Any questions? I'm going to ask for a motion to acknowledge the completion of the report.
Well, actually, yeah, could I ask a few questions?
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so I think this is, this has been a robust conversation with the city for a while. I think this is all looks really exciting. Do we have projected cost estimates for what something like this might run in your studies? Like some of the options you had, what kind of ballpark budgeting we'd be looking at?
Hey, Joe, this is Mike. That's a great question. The short answer is no, we did not look into cost estimates for any of these facilities, the various types of improvements. It was more or less to determine the feasibility and to help prioritize the location was our overall objective. So that being said, yeah, the short answer is no. I mean, we do have some numbers for other types of similar facilities for other projects that we've done. We could probably come up with some preliminary estimates if need be, but it would be very high level stuff and nothing overly complex if we were to go that route.
Great. Well, I think the study looks really great. I think these would be really important changes to make, and I'd love to connect with you after the meeting to discuss further.
Excellent, Joe. I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Hey, Joe, this is Dan Kwasnowski from SOCBA. I just wanted to point out that Owen Kearney and our team are heading up a lakefront LWRP update, which does have capital funding attached to it. So fortunately, this planning project will roll right into that planning project. And one of the things we want to look at was mobility, and the market area is included in our boundaries. So hopefully we'll be able to put some numbers on some of these things in the next year or so.
Great. I'd love to stay in the loop on that, Dan, if you wouldn't mind, including, I know a lot of my fellow counselors have frequently talked about this intersection and the potential to really increase activity there. And, the connectivity of it, I think is really vital to, the economic growth and vitality of the area. So I think, this is really an investment I know a lot of counselors feel is worth making. So I'd love to be kept in the loop as you guys continue this discussion and kind of see what we can do from the council's perspective to advocate for this and help push it forward.
Okay, we will do that.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? All right, can I get a motion to acknowledge the completion of the report?
So moved.
By Joe, second.
This is Dan, I'll second.
Thanks, guys. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, bridge and pavement condition management system.
Yep, this is a recurring annual item that we have, and basically just outlines the infrastructure conditions of our region on an annual basis, and kind of is a way for us to measure our investments and if they're doing a good job in terms of keeping pace or falling behind with our infrastructure. Andrew Frazier put this together. He's has a pre-recorded presentation, and then we can have an open Q&A on it.
Hello, everyone. This is Andrew Frazier providing a review of this past UPWP year's Bridge and Pavement Condition Management System report. So, as many of you know, this is one of the SMTC's yearly reports, and with it come a number of report goals, such as collecting scores on federal aid-eligible roads and applicable roadway bridges, storing data for easy access by MPO and member agency staff, justifying the large portion of TIP funds going to bridge and pavement projects, and to help prioritize our investments so we get our proverbial best bang for our buck. As a side note, all the data in this report, unless otherwise noted, is from 2018 and 2019. So let's hop right in with bridges. Bridges are rated on a scale of good, fair, poor, based on federal performance measures. These are made up of individual metrics from the National Bridge Inventory, items 68, 69, 60, and 62, which are deck, superstructure, substructure, and culvert, respectively. It's important to think of these ratings in terms of deck area instead of number of structures. As this table on the right shows, NYSDOT may only own 57% of bridge structures in our MPA, but they own 80% of all the deck area. The chart at the bottom gives our MPA bridge ratings by deck area: 21% good, 69% fair, and 10% poor. Here's a screenshot of a couple maps available in the report. I encourage you to take a look there, as showing these maps up on a screen is not necessarily the best way to view it, but just to give you an overview of what they look like. So let's move on to pavement. This report uses a 1 through 10 surface score rating scale developed by shown on the right. That rating scale is 9 through 10 are excellent, 7 and 8 are good, 6 is fair, and 1 through 5 is poor. Additionally, some roads are given a rating of not rated, and usually due to construction or materials. Included in this report are all federal aid eligible roads owned by the City of Syracuse, Onondaga County, Madison and Oswego counties for the portions which are in the MPA, and then local towns and villages. Additionally, all City of Syracuse roads were rated last year as part of a separate effort, and that process is documented in the appendix of this report. So one thing you might have noticed that is missing, and it's an important thing to note about this report, is that it does not include NYSDOT ratings. Statewide, there's a new type of pavement rating effort occurring to meet federal performance measures, which is causing some delays. This data was not provided to the SMTC at the time of this report, so the most recent NYSDOT ratings which are available are from 2017, which are actually featured in last year's report. So one of the side effects of not including the NYSDOT ratings is that we are not able to provide MPA-wide statistics, but we did include information for each road owner. Here we show the weighted average ratings for FAE roads for the city of Syracuse, which is 6.6, Onondaga County, 7.6, Madison County, 7.3, Oswego County, 7.0, and then towns and villages for 6.5. On the left, there's a screenshot from the report. Again, check out the actual document to see them a little better. And here's a little bit of a zoomed in area to help you see it a little bit more. Also included, we have the actual percentages of excellent, good, fair, and poor roads by road owner in the MPA. And I'm not going to go through them all, but you can refer to the report for additional information. So an important part of the Bridge and Paving Report is how we stack up against federal performance measures and the targets we adopted, which were created by the state. This is also important for our long-range transportation plan. Bridges are pretty straightforward, with 2 performance measures: the percent of the national highway system, that's NHS bridges, by deck area in good condition, and then the same in poor condition. The chart on the left shows the NISDOT baseline data for these metrics for 2018 and 2019, and then the same for the MPA. Also shown are our 2- and 4-year targets for these measures. Pavement is a little bit more difficult. You see on the right 4 measures: percent of interstate pavements in good condition and in poor condition, and then the percent of non-interstate NHS pavements in good condition and poor condition. The issue here is that these good and poor ratings are not the same as the good and poor we currently use in our rating process. They are based on a combination of metrics, similar to the bridge ratings. The problem is, collecting this information requires highly specialized and expensive equipment, so NISDOT is leading this data collection effort statewide, and we anticipate that they will eventually share this data with the MPOs. This changeover is one of the reasons for the delay in data that I mentioned earlier. Since, at the time of this report, we were not provided access to this data, we filled in our MPA values in this document and in the LRTP by using our existing rating scale. We also used 2017 and 2018 data, as this was the most recent complete data set that we had access to. Shown here, we are calling good scores as 7 through 10 on the surface score scale, and poor as scores 1 through 5. We know that this is not ideal, but we hope to adjust this process in the future as data becomes available. So, in conclusion, this report helps keep an accurate spatial and tabular data set that is easily accessible. It shows comparisons to federal performance measures. Keeping track of this type of asset data is important. We spend a majority of our TIP funds on bridges and pavements, so we should be able to show their conditions easily. Having this kind of data on hand can also prioritize the proper investment of funds in the appropriate projects, which I will actually get into an example of in a later presentation. At this point, I will happily take any questions that you may have, and you are also welcome to contact me anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew. Any questions for Andrew? All right, if there's no questions, I'd ask for a motion to acknowledge the completion of the report.
So moved, Dave Smith.
Thanks, Dave. And a second?
Second, Joe Driscoll.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, next for information purposes, we have the City of Syracuse pavement prioritization.
Yeah, this is, as you know, this is for informational purposes only. The City of Syracuse approached us to help them prioritize their pavement choices. A lot of roads in the city need work, and there isn't enough money to do them all. And they kind of worked with us to come up with a new way to take a look at the roads that can be paved to maximize the investment that's possible. So we spent some time doing that with the city and came up with a pilot process that we delivered to them this past year. I'll let them decide if it's a good process or not. I won't comment on that component of it. But we will explain to you what we did put together. Go ahead.
Hey everyone, Andrew Frazier here again with a short overview of the City of Syracuse's pavement prioritization pilot, which the SMTC helped develop. The result of this project was a tech memo which we sent to the city back in February. So, as you may recall, last summer we collected pavement ratings on the entirety of the city's road system for the first time. So one of the questions which was asked was, what do we do with all this new information? And the biggest takeaway from that was, how can we use this to prioritize the maintenance on our system? So, it's no secret that the city has a limited pavement maintenance budget. Knowing this, how can decisions be made to use the funds in that budget as best as possible? And, additionally, what data, besides pavement data, can we use to help improve decision making? The SMTC was tasked with coming up with a prioritization model to help make these decisions. One thing to note early on, there are several different ways that one could develop a system to show prioritization of pavement maintenance. What the SMTC developed is just one of probably countless ways to go about it. So let's get started. In order to develop our model, we had to consider what types of variables that should go into it. After a number of discussions with the city, we chose these: pavement condition collected by the SMTC, average annual daily traffic or AADT, functional classification, prior maintenance on a segment, emergency snow routes, planned future maintenance on a segment, proximity to major institutions, the number of water main breaks, planned reconstruction of a segment, and then the road type. The first step was to filter out roads which would not be considered for prioritization. To do this, we removed from further analysis roads which met some criteria. Pavement conditions of good or excellent were not considered. Roads with any planned immediate maintenance or reconstruction were also removed. Additionally, we only considered improved curbed streets. Unimproved streets have their own separate maintenance program and are regularly resealed. So, with the roads that remained, we assigned a weight to certain categories of attributes. This extensive process is documented in the tech memo, and I won't get into details here in the interest of time, but I will give a few examples. Let's use AADT. Corridors which have higher traffic volumes are more likely to be traveled frequently by the public. Assigning these heavily traveled corridors a higher weight helps ensure a better use of city resources by spending limited reconstruction dollars on popular travel corridors. Therefore, roads with a higher AADT were weighted more than those with lower traffic volumes. Another example is snow emergency routes. Roads considered snow emergency routes are of critical importance to the road network, either for the traveling public or for emergency services. As such, it is reasonable to attest that these roads should be maintained in a state of good repair. Emergency snow routes were weighted differently than those which were not. Now we moved on to scoring the roads in the network. This was done on the block level. Originally, the maximum score a road could receive was 30. We also added an additional weight using functional classification to help local roads, so that the city had a solid mix of larger arterials and neighborhood streets to choose from. The priority scores we calculated ranged from 8.4 to 26.4, and we then categorized these by percentile. This chart shows those breakdowns. We decided to focus on scores which fell above the 75th percentile. Using this information, we could say that blocks with a priority score above 18 would be considered reasonable and justified candidates for reconstruction. Again, these are not the only potential candidates. The SMTC's methodology is only one of several different options. So, this is great for blocks, which would be considered priorities. But it wouldn't make sense for the city to pave one block of a road and then move on to a totally different block. That's what we mean by economies of scale. To address this, we came up with the weighted average priority score. This was done to give the city a general idea of the overall priority of a road or road segment, not just a block. These segments were calculated based on federal aid eligibility. On FAE roads, we use segments based on our Syracuse Count program. Think of those larger roads across the city, the James Streets, the Teal Aves, etc. It wouldn't make sense to suggest that entire road, and these count program segments are smaller, more manageable chunks. For non-FAE roads, we considered a road overall. These roads are generally shorter on their own and could potentially be paved end-to-end reasonably. The weighted average priority score for a segment, shown as P-bar in the equation on the screen, is calculated by summing the product of each priority score and length along each block, and then dividing the sum by the appropriate block lengths. So in terms of deliverables which we provided to the city, we gave a list of blocks which fell above the 75th percentile score, which was 18, and then all street segments ordered by the weighted average priority score. And we also gave maps of the city with these metrics indicated. So that's a quick overview of the process, and I will gladly take questions now or at another time. Feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any questions?
Yeah, when we talk about the larger projects that have the potential for federal funding to get other sources of funding, what are the criteria? How do we identify, what might be a potential for larger scale funding?
So, go ahead, Jim, if you want to. The SMT, well, we do a call letter periodically for federal funds when they become available, and then the different municipalities who are eligible submit their requests, and then they're all rated against each other. The city, are not guaranteed a certain percentage of it any more than the county or the state. you all compete with your own projects as well as everybody else's projects. So it is a bit of a gladiatorial combat for a limited amount of funding available, but the city usually scores pretty well with that. So I guess specifically, what is your question about how does this fit into that?
Yeah, I guess my question in that respect is, what puts, what are the criteria that would put a Salina ahead of a Route 11 or something? You know what I mean? What would be the criteria that make certain projects, and how does this some of these formulas play into that when trying to access federal funding? So I guess I'm questioning on those, trying to get clarity on what attributes help something get in the queue further ahead of other projects when it comes to federal funding.
Well,
does that make sense? Does that make sense?
It does, but it's a complicated answer because you're competing both with your own priorities and you're competing with other people's priorities as well. And I can't tell you how a city street is going to compete with a county road that might be applying for federal funds until I see what county roads might be applying for federal funds or what state roads might be applying. And generally speaking, safety pretty much trumps almost all concerns. So safety concerns generally outweigh everything else. Mario, you want to speak a little bit about the tip development matrix?
That was a good point, Jim. That's the kind of stuff I was looking for, like safety. What the criteria would be. But sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jim, thanks. I was actually going to jump in here. So, Joe, a lot of the capital projects that come to us, when a project is submitted to the SMTC for consideration for federal funding, when we do our tip solicitations, we then compare those projects to what Megan just presented about the long-range transportation plan. That long-range transportation plan forms the basis for every selection of federal funding in our planning area. So the plan consists of numerous goals and objectives. There's some nuances that we talk about within our capital project selection, particularly if it's a bridge project. We kind of like to look to kind of that old school, benefit cost ratio. Are you getting your bang for your buck there? Higher benefit cost might be looked at more favorably than a project that's lower. On a paving side, we can get more specific to kind of a similar benefit cost ratios, but we've kind of gotten away from that over the years and really directed more to accessibility, mobility, and safety type projects. So a project from a paving side, if it meets a number of selection criteria, will be looked at more favorably than others.
Thanks. That provides a lot of clarity. And Mario, are you in the shed? I feel embarrassed. I'm in the basement, but you're in a tin shed. Does your wife keep you in the backyard, or what's going on?
I'm in the basement, but this is reclaimed work here. This is
nice. I like
doors.
it. I like it. It's better than the exposed ceilings I have behind me. But all right, sorry. I was just was curious where you were. It's an interesting background you have.
Any other questions? All right, next item is City of Syracuse sidewalk assessment.
Yeah, and I apologize, there's a typo on that summary sheet that I sent out. This is an informational item as well. This does not require a vote or a motion on the side. My apologies. As part of the City of Syracuse on-call planning support of the SMTC agreed to support the city's investigation into the feasibility of a citywide sidewalk maintenance program to be developed, administered by the City of Syracuse. They've been challenged with sidewalks maintenance, snow removal and other reasons for a number of years. So we helped them out with a pilot program before on sidewalk snow shoveling. This is basically on general sidewalk maintenance. Aaron McKeon put this one together, so go ahead.
Hello, my name is Aaron McKeon, and I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the sidewalk maintenance prioritization analysis that we conducted on behalf of the City of Syracuse earlier this year. The city requested this analysis as part of its exploration of the idea of taking over responsibility for sidewalk maintenance on all city streets. Currently, Adjacent property owners are responsible for snow clearing, periodic sidewalk replacement, and keeping sidewalks clear of vegetation. I want to note that I am just the spokesperson for a larger project team that included Mario Colon, Megan Vitale, Jason Deshays, and Andrew Frazier. Jason and Andrew especially did a lot of work on this. They did the GIS work and the quantitative analysis that makes up the bulk of what I'm about to show you. All right, so how do you prioritize the nearly 600 miles of sidewalk in the city? Clearly, some streets are main streets or major streets that connect neighborhoods. In other words, if you have to walk from your neighborhood to downtown Syracuse, there are only a handful of direct routes that let you do that. And a lot of that is captured in the functional class system pictured to the right that specifies which streets are arterials, which are collectors, and which are local neighborhood streets. And in many cases, the arterials and collectors that are near neighborhood facilities and that are walkable are already part of the city's sidewalk snow removal pilot. But after you take those major streets out of the equation, you have to ask, what makes the local neighborhood streets different from one another? Well, one way to think about that is to ask, are there places where people need sidewalks more than others? One solution to that question goes back to something we developed several years ago, the pedestrian demand model. That's also pictured to the right. This assigns a weight to every sidewalk in the city based on the degree to which people would want to walk there, which is based on a combination of land use and demographic information. That model doesn't take traffic volume into account, and studies have shown that busier streets are more dangerous for pedestrians, and even a small increase in traffic volume can be more dangerous. So we wanted to take that into consideration, and also we knew, as I've said, that we had already done an exercise similar to this to figure out which streets should be prioritized for snow removal. So those corridors were selected again because they were important, and we wanted to make sure they continued to be considered high priority corridors. We assigned these inputs various weights to generate a priority score for every segment of sidewalk in the city. As you can see, the sidewalk snow removal corridors are weighted in such a way as to ensure that they are always some of the highest scoring streets and sidewalk segments in the city. So what do the priority scores give us? Well, what you end up with is a very objective quantitative methodology that says when you have a highly walkable land use pattern and demographic characteristics that suggest lots of people who need to get around on foot every day, you should prioritize sidewalk maintenance in those areas. In this example, the near west side gets relatively high scores in the 5 and 6 range because it has more households without vehicles, more senior housing, busier transit stops. It's got medical offices in the neighborhood, and you can see a pattern of pedestrian vehicle crashes in that neighborhood as well. And all of those are elements in the pedestrian demand score. One missing piece in this decision-making structure is sidewalk quality data. One clear priority is to invest in the worst quality sidewalks on the highest scoring segments first, but we don't have parcel level data on where the sidewalks are in good or bad condition. Our interns spent this summer collecting very detailed sidewalk quality data for a few city neighborhoods. Once this quality data is complete, the city can use the priority score and other data to allocate resources to sidewalk maintenance. The ultimate decision-making structure can use priority score, a mix of functional classes like main streets and local streets, and city quadrants, which is all included in a sidewalk database. With the data we had, we could not create a master list of sidewalks that needed to be repaired in, say, year 1 or year 2, etc. But we did develop an objective, rational system for prioritizing how repairs and replacements can be done. Essentially, that'll be by taking a quality score for sidewalks, combining it with the priority score, and coming up with a, if you will, a master score that would be applied on whatever mix of sidewalks the city is interested in. Could be by quadrant, could be on a mix of local and federally aid eligible streets.
All right, any questions? All right, moving on, US Route 11 corridor plan for Cicero.
This one will require action by the committee. This is part of our 2019-2020 UPWP. We completed the US Route 11 corridor study for the town of Cicero. This considered future land use and transportation system needs within the Route 11 corridor from Bear Road to Route 31. Megan Vitale led this project and put together a brief presentation for you, and then we followed it up with a Q&A.
This is Megan Vitale, Principal Planner with the SMTC, and I'll be talking about the work we recently completed on the US 11 Corridor Study. This study was conducted on behalf of the Town of Cicero and the Syracuse-Onondaga County Planning Agency to analyze future land use and transportation system needs in the Route 11 corridor between Bear Road and Route 31, with the goal of creating concepts to guide future development, with an emphasis on infill development, safety and multimodal mobility, and aesthetics. We held 3 study advisory committee meetings and presented the draft study recommendations to the Cicero Planning Board and the Cicero Town Board. Here you can see the study area, which is a state road. The southern portion of the corridor is 5 to 7 lanes wide, with 4 travel lanes in the northern part of the corridor. Pedestrian facilities are primarily located between Bear Road and the Target Walmart area. One of the challenges is the lack of opportunities to safely cross Route 11, especially in the northern portion of the study area. SMTC conducted counts in 2018 in the morning, afternoon, and Saturday midday peaks. All intersections currently operate at overall level of service C or better during all peak hours, except Bear Road, which operates at level of service D. Saturday volumes and travel patterns are similar to the PM peak. We can see that volumes are highest south of Codinoy Road. Also, side street movements are higher during afternoons and also on Saturdays, when more people are going to and from the shopping areas. Our staff reviewed crash data from January 1st, 2013 to December 31st, 2017, and found a total of 997 crashes during that time. Crash rates are highest in the southern portion of the study corridor, and most crashes, 63%, occurred at intersections. The Study Advisory Committee provided input on the amount of development expected in and around the study corridor over the next 30 years. This scenario includes a total of over 3,000 new residential units, apartments and townhomes, 320,000 square feet of commercial development, 100 hotel rooms, and 250 industrial jobs. Our modeling also included 1,000 jobs at the White Pine Business Park in Clay. We used the travel demand model to estimate the traffic volume growth in the corridor based on the 2050 development scenario, then applied that growth rate to the existing intersection counts. We then used Synchro to analyze these intersections. The model showed the largest percent change in traffic volumes between the Target Walmart driveways and Route 31, but existing volumes are lower here. The model included a capacity increase at the 8131 interchange, and the growth scenario included a substantial number of new households within the study corridor, plus some job growth north of Route 31. This resulted in many of the new trips using the northern portion of the study corridor. With percent change in volume shown here, we found that only 3 of the 10 intersections analyzed are expected to operate at an overall level of service E during at least one peak hour, though some individual movements may operate at an LOS F. All other intersections would operate at level of service D or better. Working with the SAC, we created 4 draft concept plans for the focus areas identified early on in the study. The desire was to create walkable town center style development nodes and provide travel options off of Route 11 with access management. This concept illustrates infill development behind the Wegmans, Sun Auto, and Walmart developments. It includes a mix of housing types, smaller scale retail, and a hotel, with development oriented to a town road network with sidewalks throughout. The concept for the area around the town hall shows a new access roadway that could make additional parcels attractive for development and a new road parallel to 81 connecting to development farther south. Additional sidewalks are shown on Route 11 with crosswalks. The concept also includes closure of the Crabtree Lane access at Route 31 to all but emergency vehicles. Some large parcels along Crabtree Lane may present development opportunity, but there are environmental constraints here. So the concept shows cluster development with sidewalks and a new trail to connect to Route 11. Finally, we developed an access management concept for Route 11 from Circle Drive to Stevens Drive. There are some existing cross-parcel connections already, shown in purple. Continuing to build out that internal road network as redevelopment occurs over time will help to reduce trips on Route 11. Also, limiting left turns, especially left turns exiting from plazas, and creating clearly defined driveways generally improves operations and safety. The concept plans created promote walkable infill development with good access management throughout the corridor. Feedback at the planning board and town board meetings was generally positive, although some residents expressed concern about additional traffic associated with any further development in the study area. Overall, the town will need to carefully consider these concepts with the public input in creating a vision for this area. Modifications to the zoning code would likely be needed to achieve the type of development shown in the concepts. This vision could be further developed through a new comprehensive plan with additional public involvement. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Megan. Just in case you're on the edge of your seat, this project now continues moving south, and we're going to keep going down Route 11 apparently until we exit the entire state of New York. We're just moving this project one piece further south, and that project is kicking off this year. But in terms of questions for this project.
Okay, can I get a motion to acknowledge the completion?
I'll move it. Dave Mankiewicz.
Thanks, Dave. Second?
Second, Joe Driscoll.
Thanks, Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, moving on. County DOT Safety Assessment and Analysis.
This is the last formal presentation we have for today. The SMTC agreed to conduct a county roadway network screening of fatal and serious injury crash patterns for a 3-year period to identify and summarize findings for hotspot locations, as well as to identify high-risk roads for systemic emphasis areas. Mike Alexander completed this project. After a brief presentation, I have a Q&A on this one.
Hello, everyone. This is a presentation on the SMTC's 2020 Onondaga County Safety Assessment. The Onondaga County Safety Assessment was requested by the County Department of Transportation. The county wants to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes on their road network. The assessment identifies 92 focus areas and summarizes crash patterns at 12 hotspot locations. The study also identifies high-risk roads for systemic emphasis areas. Results will inform future decisions and support efforts to obtain safety funds. The county owns about 800 miles of road, 113 signalized intersections, and 289 unsignalized intersections that involve 2 county roads. Intersections with a state road were excluded from this study. The road network is divided into 722 segments for analysis purposes. Approximately 8,000 crashes occurred during a 3-year period. Of those, 22 were fatal crashes and 217 were serious injury crashes. So we asked the questions, where do these occur and do clusters exist? 87% of fatal and 67% of serious injury crashes occur on segments. Fatal crashes did not occur at signalized intersections, nor within 250 feet of one. But these intersections experienced 31 serious injury crashes. Unsignalized intersections experienced 2 fatal crashes and 17 serious injury crashes. We mapped these crash locations and found they are distributed across the network. No clear clusters exist. So we developed an approach to identify hotspots. First, we identified 92 focus areas. Focus intersections involved a fatal or serious injury crash. Focus segments involved a fatal crash or 2 or more serious injury crashes. Next, we sorted the focus areas into tiered categories based on the number of the following criteria that apply. We asked the questions, does the location involve a fatal crash, a fatal and a serious injury crash, 3 or more serious injury crashes for segments, or 2 or more for intersections? And also, is the location within the top 10 for the total number of crashes, the number of injury crashes, and the crash rate? Segments that met 4 criteria are deemed hotspots. Remaining segments are filtered into special mention categories of Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3. Likewise for intersections. This process identified 5 hotspot segments and 7 hotspot intersections. Segments included Henry Clay from Taft to Buckley, Hinsdale from Genesee to Milton, Old Liverpool Road from Buckley to Beechwood, West Genesee from Hinsdale to 173, West Genesee from 173 to Westland. The intersections included, and these are all signalized, Milton and Hinsdale, Morgan and Buckley, Morgan and Wetzel, Route 57 in John Glenn, Route 57 in Long Branch, South Bay and Thompson, and West Taft and Buckley. We summarized applicable crash attributes for each hotspot. Summary information shows crash locations, roadway features, collision type, apparent factors, and lighting, weather, and road surface conditions. A summary narrative accompanies each graphic in the report. Field observations are also summarized. A similar summary was prepared for each intersection. Consistent with the state's strategic highway safety plan, this study also analyzed systemic emphasis areas. A systemic assessment is different than a hotspot assessment. It identifies high-risk roads for each category. Systemic safety improvements are widely implemented at target high-risk roadways correlated with particular crash types rather than crash frequency. The county's most common emphasis areas include lane departures, intersections, and age-related crashes. Speed, vulnerable users, and driver behavior categories occurred, but not as frequently. We also learned that nearly 70% of all fatal crashes involved a lane departure. Next, we sorted roads by functional class, number of lanes, and speed, and calculated fatal and serious injury crash rates per mile for each emphasis area and each road category. Road categories with rates at least twice the total emphasis area's rate are deemed high-risk roads for that emphasis area. For example, as shown in the map, lane departures tend to occur on rural 2-lane low-speed collectors, urban 2-lane low and high-speed arterials, urban 4-lane low and medium-speed arterials, and urban 4-lane high-speed collectors. The state has currently developed a lane departure action plan. Should competitive funds be made available for systemic improvements, like with the pedestrian safety action plan, the county is well positioned to apply and attach study materials showing high-risk roads. This puts the county at a competitive advantage. We've prepared maps that show high-risk roads for each emphasis area in support of such efforts. Hotspot and high-risk road findings will inform future design and engineering decisions and support efforts to solicit safety funds. We are also currently undertaking a similar assessment for city roads and will complete that effort this program year. At this point, I welcome any questions or comments.
Okay, thanks. Any questions? Ask for a motion to acknowledge the completion of the report.
So moved, Dave Knapp.
Thanks, Dave. Second?
Second, Dave Smith.
Thanks, Dave. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, that was our last report. Next item is election of officers. Jim, you have nominees?
Yep. Yeah, we have not a slate of nominees. They serve for 2 years on our committees. For the policy committee, Brian has graciously acknowledged to said he'll stay on for another 2-year stay as chair, and Corey Driscoll has agreed to move into the position of vice chair. So, unless she changed her mind and didn't tell me about it.
Never. I've never changed my mind on that, Jim.
Okay, so I need a motion to accept or to approve the officers.
Correct.
So moved.
Second, Dave Knapp.
Joe, second by Dave. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, next item is public comment. Jim, you want to take that?
I will. So this meeting is live streamed over YouTube with a 20-second delay or so. So now I have to go to the person who's monitoring the YouTube stream and ask if any questions have been typed into that, and then we'll read those back into this group here. Yeah, sorry for that. It's just as good as we can come up with given the current limitations that we have. So
That's
Andrew.
We posted the kind of notice for open for public comment at the end of the safety presentation, so it's pretty caught up by now. We have nothing coming in. But so to anybody watching, though, you're always welcome to contact us at any time with any questions on any of our studies, either through our phone number or at contact@smtcmpo.org. So I think we're all set with the public comment, though.
Thank you very much.
I have a quick one just to throw in. It wasn't a good spot in the agenda to throw it in, just a general thing that actually Casey Jordan and myself were talking about before the meeting. That, something to discuss between now and the next meeting or whatever. But I think we need to come up with a better way of when we're looking for public input for different things, either specific projects or in general. I'd love to see a way to broaden our reach a little bit more. I know it goes out to, the people that follow SMTC and things like that, but it's really not I don't think it's really getting down to the, to the people on the street who drive the roads every day or commute, whatever. And so I'm not offering a solution at this point. We were just talking about it earlier, but I'd love to come up with a strategy to try and get the word out a little bit better so that we can get input from everybody, not just kind of the activist folks.
Sure. It tends to be a bit easier when we're doing a project in someone's neighborhood. That's pretty much, that's the easiest time to get people to come out and participate in the process.
Yep.
The more broad or the more esoteric the topic, the less likely we are to get anyone's active input, is what we've learned over the time.
Yep, no, I understand. But if there's things like that, that maybe, that some of the folks here on the call can, from the legislature, we've got, ways of getting the word out, and certainly the common council and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Just the more diverse input we can get, the better.
I agree 100%, and I will take you up on any ideas and offers that you have.
Yeah, Dave, I appreciate that input, and from the council's perspective, we'd love to collab with you. I know I definitely realize that it's hard. It's always a challenge to get engagement. So the more hands on deck, the better off we'll be. I'm definitely up to meet up and talk about ways we could expand engagement.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
I just want to say thank you. This is excellent attendance for today's meeting. I know it was much longer than most of our meetings are, just because we weren't able to meet earlier because of everything going on. And so this was probably twice the agenda we would normally have. But thank you very much for everyone calling in today and for participating in basically an hour and a half to 2 hour meeting. I really appreciate you taking your time for doing that today.
Yep, I'll echo that. Thank you all, and we're adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.